Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about something I hope Nintendo will not take down, which is about that game that people are playing for the Playtest Program as a part of Nintendo Switch Online Plus Expansion Pack. It is a massive multiplayer online game that Nintendo is testing out, and I can't show any footage. I can't show you a single pic. I can't even show you a single pic that is zoomed in, that is blurred with Gaussian Blur 45. Because I did that last week, or rather, the beginning of this week, Monday, and the video was taken down after 11 hours. So I have to be extremely careful about this, and I ask that Nintendo, please, do not delete or remove this video. I will talk about this, but I have not agreed to anything. I'm not a part of the playtest program. I have seen footage and clips, and I've been analyzing it. And looking at it all, I have to say that this game has massive, massive implications for the future of Nintendo Online games, and it's extremely exciting. From one perspective, just in this game alone, but then from another, what it might suggest for other games that are in the works. So first, let's get into what this game is. And from what I've seen and from what I've discussed with others, you play as a caveman of sorts with a weird, tail that can maneuver around and do different things. There is an overall hub area where you can interact with 99 other fellow cavemen that are playing the game, so 100 people in an area that's actually rather sprawling, I would say. There is a conveyor belt in the middle that you can kind of zoom through. People are flying and bouncing around. There are different things you can interact with and build, but ultimately it's a prep zone before you go out into the bigger open world. Now there is a map you can interact with, and on this map it looks like it does track your progress and your movement, which we'll speak more on a little bit later. But then after you check in this map, you can just kind of seamlessly go into whatever area you intend to go. And in this area is the open environment, and what you will see most likely is a massive environment that's shrouded in darkness. It's kind of like Minecraft, but really dark. But if you put up a beacon, it will light up, and the higher up the beacon is, the more that light will shine through, and it essentially creates like a mini little territory within this giant dark environment. And you'll see others in the background making progress as well. Now, from what I've heard, when you jump into this open environment, there can only be up to 10 others, or 9 others, a total of 10. So there's perhaps not as much going on as you might like, from a massive multiplayer online perspective at least. But you do explore around this environment, and you can break up blocks, very much like Minecraft. You do acquire resources. Apparently, there are moons or other smaller celestial bodies that are kind of like mini planets you can go to acquire even more resources. And then you come back to this bigger open world to continue to build and progress. But yes, you essentially build up these different structures to get higher and higher, so your beacon can expand its light further and further so you can see more and have more territory. But there are several elements that really struck me as very interesting. A big part of it is the movement. If you've gotten a chance to see some of the gameplay, players can essentially jump and zoom around kind of like Spider-Man, which is really cool. And I think that makes things very interesting when you account for all the large environments that there may be as more and more players build up their different structures in the overworld. It's not just zooming around like Spider-Man. You can jump, you can hover, you can definitely do a lot of things in the air. It's fun to move around. The movement in this game is pretty well done, which I do think is important for an open world game, because if you have this vast world to explore, you better be able to do it in a fun and interesting way. Now, some people have wondered if maybe this game is kind of like a placeholder and it's not a full-on game. And in my opinion, from everything I've seen, I think this is indeed going to be a full-on game. It's not totally finalized yet. There are some details and kinks they're likely working out, it looks like. But this is going to be a game that we will access through Nintendo Online. It's going to be something that Nintendo Online users are going to use. Now, it's playable right now only through the playtest program for expansion packs, so I don't know if this is going to be an exclusive expansion pack member game. Maybe for expansion pack members it's free, but for others you have to pay something, or maybe it's just going to be free regardless. It's hard to say. Something that has been observed is that it does look like there will be some level of microtransactions. In other words, there will be parts of the game where you will be able to buy more currency or credits. I don't remember the exact word, but there's something you can buy that can help you out in the game from the eShop. So if you have something like that already in there, even if you can't actually access it, that indicates that, yeah, they do intend to have this to be an actual game. And there's a lot of detail here, there's a lot going on, even if visually it looks to be simple. There's still a lot of elaborate systems in place here. And so when it comes to just this game alone, I think this game is going to be fun. I'm interested in it. I like the idea of being able to build up really high up and move around quite freely, and also being able to do it with others. Now I do hope they can expand on that. Just having 10 in one area doesn't seem like that much. Of course, with only 10,000 people being able to play this game overall right now, perhaps that's one of the reasons why it might seem a little bare in certain areas. Maybe once this game is open to the public, you're going to more consistently have a full party once you're out into the world, or they'll expand on that number because Nintendo right now is doing a bit of a stress test to see how their servers can handle it. We shall see. And I think this is going to be a great kind of game to have for Nintendo Switch Online. To have a free game like this makes having a Switch Online subscription all the more interesting. So it'll be nice to see Nintendo go beyond just the Tetris 99s and the F-Zero 99s and see what else they can do, and I guess this is what their next big thing is for Switch Online. Do I think this takes away from GameCube coming to Switch Online at some point? I don't. My expectation has been, for the most part, that we would see GameCube during the Switch 2 era. Of course, lately, leading up to this announcement, there appeared to be a lot of smoke, and I still think that smoke applies. It just doesn't mean we're getting GameCube quite yet. There does seem like something GameCube is happening behind the scenes when you account for the shipping data, when you account for the trademarks, when you account for this weird glitch that's going on since firmware update 19.0 with third-party GameCube controllers. There is something weird going on with that, but it's not necessarily related to what's going on with this playtest program. But perhaps next year we'll see what this GameCube thing might be. Fingers crossed. Before we continue on here though, let me briefly take this moment to say thank you for watching all this time, and if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. But now let's start to expand a little bit beyond just what this game is and perhaps what it suggests just overall. So I noticed something very interesting about this game. Part of it has to do with the movement, I mentioned that to some extent already, but there is a climbing feature which did remind me a little bit of Breath of the Wild, even though it looks to work a bit differently. But then I also noticed that you can fuse almost every block or item, just like fuse in Tears of the Kingdom. And I also noticed that you can pick up all these items and maneuver them around and attach them, very much like Ultra Hand in Tears of the Kingdom. So it does kind of feel like a big part of this game uses something very similar to fuse and Ultra Hand to manipulate and interact with the environment. And when thinking a little bit more about the environment, if you consider that this is a massive open area in the dark where you're looking for different beacons of light to progress, it sounds a lot like the depths from Tears of the Kingdom. But then I also noticed that when you check the map screen, there is like a reddish dotted line that tracks your prior progress. It shows how you've been traversing the world, which reminds me very much of the feature from the DLC of Breath of the Wild, Hero's Path mode, that tracks your movement throughout the map. It's very similar. And so I'm left with the impression after watching gameplay and looking at everything and seeing what people have to say, that this playtest program game uses a lot of similar mechanics from Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. And this is an internally Nintendo developed game, so we assume. The belief right now is that it's made by EPD4, which is interesting because EPD4 is also responsible for Game Builder Garage. And looking at this game, looking at the way the characters move, somewhat some of the animations, the jumping animations and such, it kind of does feel like they made this game based off the same technology they used to make Game Builder Garage, at least to some extent. And so I have this overall sense that there must be a lot of borrowing of technology within these different internal Nintendo teams, and they are using even Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom systems to build up this game. That's the kind of impression I'm left with. There's even like hearts to dictate your life, like in Zelda as well, which is also very interesting. Now, I'm not trying to indicate that this is somehow actually like a Zelda game, and it's nothing like that. It's not a Zelda game. But it's just curious how there are some very Zelda-like things in this game. And it does have me wondering if this game is meant to test more than just online servers. Because when you also consider that tail lasso thing that allows you to zoom and hookshot around, well, what if this is an example of how a hookshot might work in an open-air environment? Us Zelda fans have been missing the hookshot since the prior Zelda games, but in the wild era of Zelda, we haven't seen it. How might it work? The hookshot was considered at one point, but it hasn't made it into the modern Zelda games. Could what we might be seeing in this playtest program be some insight into what's next for Zelda? Call me crazy, but some part of me thinks there is, even if it may feel like a stretch currently. We have heard that Nintendo aims to test the boundaries of mass multiplayer functionality and gameplay on their servers. So the fact that Nintendo has servers here with a lot of different things going on in this world, with all this functionality, with a lot of players, and a lot of really interesting gameplay mechanics, this game could work to experiment from two different sides here. It's not just about testing out their servers and seeing how much they can do, but also stacking on a variety of different gameplay ideas, as we sort of described already. This game is kind of like a fusion of Zelda mechanics, Minecraft, Game Builder Garage, Death Stranding, Spider-Man, and more. Now, honing in on this idea of Nintendo testing out their own servers, I'm brought back to something I mentioned recently in terms of the improvement to online games for certain Nintendo franchises. The big one that comes to mind is Super Smash Bros. As we approach the Switch 2 generation, there is a high likelihood that Nintendo is going to do something Smash Bros. Related early on into the Switch 2 generation, which doesn't seem that far off. And even if they don't give us a full-on brand new Smash Bros., I have to think that they'll at least expand on what we got for Smash Ultimate. And one great way to do that is by offering better online. In my opinion, the online for Smash Ultimate is essentially unplayable. A fast-paced fighting game like that, if there's even an ounce of lag, it's an issue. And there's more than just a little ounce, there's a whole bunch of it. So I do think games like Smash Bros. Might be greatly benefited if Nintendo worked on their online servers. But then we also think about something else that's likely to come out early into the generation, and that's the next Splatoon. I understand we just finished up the DLC for Splatoon 3, but if you look at how things happened with the transition from Splatoon 1 to 2, it was very similar. So the next Splatoon could be around the corner, even if some people might think that that EPD group should be working on Animal Crossing right now. They might be working on both. Regardless, there's going to be another Splatoon, and when it comes, how might they expand on the game if they feel like they can do more with their online servers now? I think that can make things very interesting. Some people have sort of complained about how Splatoon hasn't changed that much game to game. With Splatoon 4, if they feel more comfortable expanding on their gameplay possibilities thanks to what they've tested out with their new online servers and such, we could be in for some significant changes. But we don't even necessarily need to talk about Switch 2 games. Let's talk about some Switch 1 games. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Might it have multiplayer? Could this be expansive as well? Will there be some co-op involved? Might they be taking some cues from Federation Force but doing it in a cool, more interesting way? It's possible. Or how about Pokémon? Pokémon's an interesting one because they've already been experimenting with cooperative online play. In Sword and Shield, you could explore all the wild areas with your friends, although in a limited fashion. And then in Scarlet and Violet, they expanded on this more so. The entire game you can explore with your friends. And so how might they improve on it with the next generation of Pokemon, which is supposedly coming to both Switch 2 and Switch 1, or at least they're experimenting with a Switch 1 version as well. And whenever we talk about MMOs, I have to bring up Xenoblade. No, Xenoblade's not an MMO. But Xenoblade Chronicles X was a game that came out for Wii U that was perhaps the first game that I noticed where Nintendo was starting to dabble a little bit in some MMO-like qualities, because as you explore the world of Xenoblade Chronicles X, there was like a blade system involved where as you would acquire items and different things and meet certain goals, it would update to your squad. and you'd be competing with others and trying to acquire different items. That's how I remember it from when I played this game years ago, something like that. And there was also an area where you could jump in with others and fight these massive bosses. But it was very segmented, and the cooperative play was very passive. And I think about what we love about Xenoblade now, it's exploring these massive worlds with these really cool stories and amazing RPG mechanics, but you always have a party with you. They've expanded on the scope of this party. In Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you control 6 different characters, and sometimes even have a 7th member tagging along as well. But you control each of these characters at a time individually, and then obviously the AI controls them when you're not controlling that particular character. You can switch seamlessly, but how cool would it be if in the future we see another game from Monolith, be it with the Xenoblade branding or not, and it has a similar sort of setup in terms of the party system, but instead of you controlling each and every character, you focus on just your one and all the different cool things you can do with that, and you're playing throughout this massive, relatively open adventure with your friends, and they're also part of your party and they're controlling their own individual character as well. What if that's where they take Xenoblade X? For the numbered Xenoblade games, you don't create your own character, they're already established characters. But perhaps we could see a follow-up to Xenoblade Chronicles X, where they build on how you customize your own character, and if you customize your own character, perhaps others can customize theirs, and you have everyone with their own unique identities working together, creating a party, exploring this massive open world. I don't think that's an unreasonable future, especially when we already see Game Freak doing something like this with Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. I imagine that most of you watching would put more faith in Monolith putting something like this together than Game Freak. So it can definitely be done, especially with Nintendo looking to improve on their online servers. So there's a massive amount of potential here, and it's very exciting for what Nintendo might bring to the table when it comes to the future of their online games. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.